Coach, could you talk about the development of Jaron and Santi during the offseason, and will that extended season slow them down from doing four go to go this fall?
Yeah, really impressed with JJ and Santi's World Cup just endeavor. I mean, besides just the tournament itself, all the exhibition games. Was fortunate enough to go see them in Spain with that 3-team tournament, which was awesome. Spent time with them. Both guys really relished the opportunity to represent their countries, but continue playing high-level basketball even during the summer, which you don't always get. So I don't think it'll slow them down. Talking with our medical team, those guys are in obviously great shape, and in the back of my mind, obviously we'll be smart in terms of trying not to overtax them. But all indications are those guys don't have anything alarming coming into the season that we have to be over cautious about. I think they're full go. I think both guys gained so much of that experience. Obviously, JJ playing a different role, obviously in a different system, just, thinking the game differently. I think he credits that a lot. Obviously, he was kind of used in some different situations too. But he and I talked about just take the positives from the experience. And obviously, Santi just continuing to grow his role. Obviously, he came off the bench. Sometimes he started, but he was super aggressive. And I loved his attack mentality, both sides of the floor. So I think both those guys benefit greatly from not just the games, but the training, obviously the responsibility to represent their countries. I think those guys are fired up to kind of carry that over to the start of the season.
Taylor in the back, right? There you go. After so many months of unknowns about with Ja, how good does it feel? We just talked to Zach about knowing that Ja is going to be there during practice, is going to be there on the trips. I mean, what does that mean as the head coach to know that Ja will be surrounded by his team and then kind of be able to roll into the season once the suspension plays itself out?
Yeah, it's great. Finally, so many conversations happened throughout the summer. I think it's so important that he's with us. I mean, he's so important to our team. And obviously, I know he's going to be out of game play, but being fully immersed in our team environment, practices, shoot-arounds in the locker room, obviously traveling, it's huge. And it's not just about, the teammates supporting him. It's him supporting his teammates as well. It goes both ways. I think it's great having that clarity for sure, because he's so impactful to our team. He's so impactful, on the floor, but what he can do just in the team spaces as well. And I'm just glad we finally got to that decision. And in terms of like the seamless transition, obviously we know the 25 games, but, he and I have talked about, this is a great opportunity to really invest in his just overall well-being. It's off the floor, it's on the floor, but, we've got a separate plan, designed for him outside of just the team training, where we're going to push him. He's excited about him, how we can challenge him even more to when we talk about being the best version of Ja, moving forward. It's all areas. It's his body. It's reading the game. It's the skills that he can develop so that when he comes back, he sees where the team's at. He trusts the team trusts him with all the work he's doing so that it is a seamless transition come, game 26. So very glad, that he's around the team, because obviously I'm bringing a different message to the team at the start of the year, where we've got to reestablish some things, refocus on some things, and that's for everyone. That starts with me. So having him there so that he can feel that as well and carry that out, along the team track, but also his individual track's going to be great.
I mean, along those lines, with Ja able to practice but not play, from a team perspective, how do you approach preparing for the lineups and rotations you'll use starting in game one, and then for the adjustment to some different lineups and maybe different style a little bit that you'll have in game 26?
Yeah, I think at its core, we don't want to. We've never changed our philosophy on how we want to guard, how we want to play offense. We're going to do a couple of different things spatially, offensively, where anybody has, the opportunity to be a playmaker. Obviously, is a huge part to the engine offensively and a primary playmaker for us. But, he and I talked about it as we go into camp. It's in a unique situation where even though he's allowed to practice, I've got to start diving into what, not just our opening night roster is going to be, but seeing those different combinations like you talked about. So I envision training camp having different starting lineups. He probably won't be with the first group. He could be with the second or third group. So he's still integrating with his teammates, but I've got to have a focus on what's best for the team, not just for the start of the regular season, but even throughout training camp and throughout the preseason slate to give different guys opportunities. I've talked to the entire roster about how I'm going to do different things from a guard wing combination, even our bigs throughout, just so that, I was probably too stubborn in the past. I've got to be more open-minded to trying different things. I know this opportunity presents itself, but I want to be better suited now so that even as the regular season unfolds and hopefully beyond, I'm better prepared to make the best decisions possible for what's needed from the team that night. So he and I have talked about that. Team understands that. I've talked to guys about that as well, how roles will be changing and how we navigate through camp. He's going to get opportunities, but it's just not going to be probably the first or second team.
Taylor, just want you to expand on kind of what you just said there in regards to like the half court offense. Something we've talked about a lot. I saw you said you're gonna turn over every rock to kind of improve offensively and defensively this year. But speaking specifically to that, the half court offense, when you went back and watched everything this summer, because you pretty much have a lot of the same personnel, what can you change systematically that you've learned that'll help this team improve in that area?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we looked at. I think we're going to kind of take a different approach to how we teach our offense, that it's not just fast break, secondary motion, half court, that's these kind of buzz phrases, but kind of looking at it in terms of gears. That our third gear is going to be our transition offense, where you've got advantages. You're playing off of misses, steals, long rebounds. Second gear is going to be kind of that in-between game that we've got to significantly get better at too. So it's more or less against a set defense. So that obviously goes into what we previously called our half-court offense. So it's just having better recognition, which is, I think it's like 50% of the game when we did our projects, of understanding that a bulk share of this is kind of, I don't want to say out of the control of just mandating play calls. We want our guys to play with freedom. So when we don't have the initial break and we're going up against a set defense and flow, one possession to the next, we want to have better organization, better reads, play with better spacing. That's going to create advantages for us. And then obviously our first gear is going to be, dead ball situations, coming out of timeouts, maybe after free throws, truly against a set defense that's not on the move, and really understand where we're, manipulating the defense, knowing the coverages, being better prepared for that. And then the biggest probably factor outside of just teaching the vision is the development behind it, and really diving in more of, how we're structuring our individual workouts, our vitamins, to basically have this game plan, but how are we going to produce at the end of the day? How are we going to space appropriately? How are we going to play, make, and pass appropriately? And how are we going to take and knock down the shots that we need to? And really investing a lot more time there. It's something we've been talking about in the offseason, not just having the roadmap and the game plan, but also what's the player development behind it, to make sure that we're getting what we need out of our offense and improving significantly in those areas, which will now be second and first gear.
Coach, of course, with Ja being out, everyone's talking about who your fifth starter would be. I'm sure you have no clue at this point. You haven't even seen anybody, but what type of player, what type of skill set are you looking for to finish out your starting lineup?
Well, the number one thing, and I've talked to all these guys about, how I'm going to approach training camp. We'll probably have different starting lineups throughout preseason. So obviously, forewarning y'all ask me before games, like who we're going to be playing, because I want to see a lot of different things. Obviously it's got to be a spot that's earned, but also we know how important our bench is too. So it's not just about who that fifth starter is going to be. But at the end of the day, the driving thing, it's simple to say, is how are you going to impact winning? How are you going to embrace the role? How are you going to understand that defense has got to be a priority to you? The playmaking of, you're probably going to be off the ball more, so someone in that spot that can make, crucial reads to continue to facilitate the offense. But obviously, as I talked about, our driving kick, knocking down shots is going to be really important. So the investment in their shots is going to be really important too. So adding that shooting piece, but it always starts with defense. Who's going to be that, complementary player that's going to be able to just unlock things for us as a team on the defensive end, but even offensively with just the reads and the knocking down shots.
You mentioned training camp, preseason, first 25 games of the season, focusing on preparing for that. With Marcus Smart in particular, how much does what you're asking from him change when Ja comes back? And, in fairness to him, how do you kind of balance preparing him for the 25 games and then preparing him for the long term after that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be honest conversations, which we've already talked about a little bit, and there's going to be more to come. Obviously, he's in a unique situation, but I think credit to him, he's been able to be very malleable in the different roles that he's had over his years in the league, offensively in particular. So obviously, when Ja is back, there's going to be a natural shift. I've had those conversations with the entire roster already, but the responsibility still doesn't change in terms of how you impact the game on offense or defense. We're just going to add another great player, different engine to the group. Leaning on Marcus's playmaking and leadership. and organization skills from the point guard spot, and now having, when we're fully together, you've got Ja, Marcus, Dez, guys that can all be leaders. It's going to just unlock so much more in our offense, so long as we put in the work and we build that trust and that chemistry with those three guys out there. But I think, there is going to be a natural shift, but the dialogues we're going to try to just put him in the best position, Marcus, that is, understanding our system, leaning on him, learning more about him. Obviously, we've seen him in Boston and what he's capable of, but understanding how he's going to fit and enhance what we do, not just on offense, but defensively too. This is going to be new for us. I've said, having one of our primary playmakers be also one of our primary defenders is going to be an adjustment for us and our coaching staff to kind of navigate. But when Ja does come back, now we're going to even have more options and threats on both sides of the floor to utilize, which is a blessing. So it's going to be fun to navigate. That starts now in training camp as we get a feel, learning what Marcus is going to bring to us throughout preseason, the first 25 games, but knowing at his core, he just wants to impact winning, and he's willing to accept whatever role it is, and that being a very important role, it's going to be easy to navigate.
Taylor, how much do you guys – there's obviously a program for just about everybody on the roster, priorities and everything, but where is Ziaire right now in terms of how much you've had to learn about him as a player, but also physically and just mentally in terms of approaching this year? What do you expect from him?
Yeah, I think a huge step for him. Number one thing, obviously, is, building up that foundation with his health. Ended last season healthy, but we really just kind of doubled down, throughout the offseason and towards the end of the regular season and then the playoffs to really just give him all the tools, really just studying, the inner workings of Ziaire Williams and making sure he's got all the resources possible to be fully healthy. I think he attacked his offseason beautifully. Was highly committed to it, one of the hardest workers, but kind of knew what to work on. So he's in great shape, great spirits. He's, looking good, all the testing that we've done. So I anticipate him having that, behind him and having a great routine and regimen and commitment, to his health. And then just, we talked about role with him a lot, just how he's going to make an impact on winning for us, that, he could have a, malleable, role definition as well. Is it starting? Is it coming off the bench? All geared towards you can really be something special on the defensive side, which we've seen. Your health's going to allow you to be on the floor, which we all know, but he's been really wired with attacking that, from a mental standpoint that will then go into his individual workouts from a defensive standpoint. And then he's got unique skills with his size, 6'9", 6'10", being another guy that can grow into a playmaker role within our offense, and then just really investing in that three-point shooting. You'll hear that a lot. I mean, there's so many guys on our roster, defense, playmaking, reads, but then three-point shooting. We're not trying to put anyone in a box, but I think he's going to really grasp that. He's got a kind of a chip on his shoulder to, bounce back. He openly talked about that with me is, after a good rookie season, he didn't have the season that he expected in his sophomore year, and he attacked his offseason with a different mentality that I think is going to really translate to taking that big step here in year 3 for him.
Hey, Taylor. Back to Marcus for a second. So, he has a reputation of being a leader and a practice intensifier. Mm-hmm. You have a very competitive team that's been together for a while. Do you suspect that training camp, as somebody tries to become a leader and sort of bring the guys along, could be tense, or is that a smooth transition where he can just step in and be a leader right away?
I think it's going to be a smooth transition. I tell anybody that comes into our group for the first time, but especially, when I've had dialogues with Marcus, I want to be you. I want you to be you. He and I talked about it multiple times throughout the summer that, he loves the practice environment. Obviously he loves the game environment, but he really embraces the preparation for the game. And not just for himself, but helping his teammates. He openly talked about that as the tone that he sets, the energy he brings in practice every single day serves one purpose. It's to make others better so that we're better in the games. And we plenty of examples that he and I, he shared with me. But I think it's going to be seamless because our team needs it. Our team's looking for it. And I think he's going to naturally do it in the right way because it's all with the intent of making others better, and it's all to lead to winning basketball at the highest level. I mean, Marcus has experienced it at the highest level, playing in numerous conference finals, all defensive player, played in the NBA finals. None of our guys have been there, so we've got to learn from him, and if he does it naturally, I think everyone knows, but they haven't seen it. Right? Tomorrow's going to be the first exposure to it, but I think it's going to all fall on the intent of this is going to help us get better. And when I've talked to him, he explains it. He tells others why he's doing it so that it can be received as it needs to be to help us get better. Great. Thanks, everybody.